Okay, well, hello, this is Don Joseph, and I'm here with Delores Ulsh on November 12th, 2020, and we're just sitting here in her kitchen, and we're going to talk a little bit about the early days in Longbranch. Now, Delores grew up in Longbranch initially, and let's just start this out. First question, Dolores, what's the first thing you remember as a child when you were growing up?
Well, first thing I remembered, I was first born in Seattle,
Uh-huh.
and I lived two lives, Seattle, Tacoma, and Longbranch. But my mainly love was out here at Longbranch, and I had my heart set down here because my family came out here to Longbranch in 1918, of which my grandma, they first lived in the locks in Seattle, and they built their boat in there and everything, and didn't like it no more, so they cruised out to Longbranch and found this property down here at Longbranch, of which they had bought. And in those days, property was very cheap, and they had about 400 feet of waterfront, and they only paid maybe $300 for it for back taxes.
Wow.
And so anyway, so they lived on their boat and things for a while, and they decided to build this house, of which the property they had purchased. And so anyway, they built this two-story house and everything, and that's how they began to settle down here at Longbranch. And in those days, there was nobody out here at all. And so they were lucky enough to get that property, and it was really nice for them because it was low bank, and they had all the seafood they wanted to live off the bay and stuff like that. And they had the clams and oysters and the fish, and everybody in those days who did come to Longbranch had lived off the bay, and so they really had a good life down there. It was hard at first because they had to do everything by hand and build their house, made their own shakes and everything for the house, and so they really made a really go of it. So thank goodness they were hardy workers.
Can you describe to us in kind of modern day terms approximately where the house was that they lived in?
It was down there at the you know where the Longbranch Cemetery is?
Yes.
You go up the hill and make a right. The road isn't there anymore. She lived next door to Mrs. Ellen Frost in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Mrs. Humphrey?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, well, she had purchased the property since Mrs. Humphrey had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, that's how we became good neighbors and everything in those days.
Where did your parents come from originally?
Well, my mom, she came from Seattle,
Uh-huh.
and so she had their home over there called Georgetown,
Mm-hmm.
and so they had lived there for a while, and then they got tired of that. Well, she met my father to be years ago from Longbranch, and so they moved out here.
Uh-huh.
So it's sort of like a combined family.
Okay. And what was his name?
Ernest Bergstrom.
Ernest Bergstrom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so anyway, there's so many Johnsons around, you got sort of mixed up what their last name were, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But anyway, my grandmother, she went out one time down out here in the boat in Felucci Bay, and she was fishing out. There was a lot of salmon out there in those days. And not knowing, the McDermotts also across the bay had purchased that property about the same time my grandma did.
Mm-hmm.
But she was out there
Far away,
fishing, yeah, far away. But she was fishing out there, and the storm came up. And she was almost over there by Faraway's property over there in front of their house when she caught this fish, and she caught the fish halfway into the boat which she didn't make the boat. She fell in the water, and the McDermott saw her out there trying to save herself, and they came out there by their boat and saved her life and took her in at McDermott's for a while, for a week, to revive her, which she was thankful for that. And so they got to be good friends, and then my grandfather became a caretaker over there for a while, through the time that they got close friends. So that was really nice of them to take her in.
Yeah. Now I understand that you worked there at Faraway.
Yes,
too.
I did. I worked at Faraway there for a little while, and I met Delores Ramsdale, and her and I worked together, and that's where I met Bud.
Yeah. Can you tell me how you met Bud and what it was like when you first saw him, and maybe your first date, if there was one, kind of like that?
It's really weird how things fell together like that, how we met, because when I was working down there with Delores Ramsdale, he was there, and he was a carpenter.
Uh-huh.
And so more or less that's how we met, and so I've been, he worked there 12 years.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, it was really interesting how different people worked down there, and got to meet each other down there and help tell stories about how they got down there, and everything.
What kind of work did you do when you were there at
Just
Faraway?
ordinary housework and yard work and stuff like that.
Yeah. How many years did you work there?
Man, I can't remember. Do you remember, Jerry?
I was there for 11 years.
Yeah, 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I only worked there maybe 3 years or so. I really can't remember that far back. But that's how I remembered him and got acquainted with him.
Uh-huh.
And so once you meet a carpenter, you never get done.
That's pretty good.
Because after we got married, I'm still helping him out off and on with the carpenter work.
Sure.
But now we can't do so much now because we're in the later years, and he did a lot of work down there at Faraway.
Now, roughly what year did you and Bud get married?
73.
73.
73. Okay.
47 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
47 years ago.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And during that time, he was still in the volunteer fire department and things like that. And so that was quite interesting, exciting life.
Did you get involved in the fire department?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, he was enough to get
Yeah.
involved with.
Now, how many children did you guys
I
have?
only have, him and I never had any.
Never had any children.
No, I only had 2 from years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we sure been kept busy through the years doing our work here. And we used to have the volunteer picnics here years ago.
Uh-huh.
And, well, we were young enough to do all this. And then we got done with that. And then we had the post office picnics here for a little while. And then got down to the community center up here.
Mm-hmm.
We had 1 or 2 picnics, didn't we, Derry?
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
I missed those days.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those good picnics.
Things like that, I always made something every year to put in the yard or something like this, and the people really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, I remember one of the fire department picnics that you had here one summer, and it was the height of the summer for me.
really, it was.
It was the most fun part.
And then another thing, they had so many kids in the pool, it looked like a daycare center.
Oh yeah.
The parents had to get out of the pool and vice versa to get the kids out of the pool so the parents could go in.
Yeah. Now, did you go to school out here in Longbranch?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah. Which one did you
At
go
Longbranch, I only went there for a short term. And you only had two rooms at that Longbranch school.
Now this would be what we call the improvement center?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
And they only had 2 rooms in that school, of which I had met Marguerite Bizarre.
Uh-huh.
She was also going there, so she was the only one that I remembered going to that school, was Marguerite Bizarre.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So anyway, I can't remember what grade that would be now, you know.
Did it have a dirt floor at the time you went?
No,
No.
no.
They had the hardwood floor.
Yeah, well, we were in, they had the regular main school.
Yeah.
But we had no lunchroom, had to eat down in the basement.
Oh, okay.
Either that or outside in the woods. Things were pretty rough in those days, but we didn't have it modern like they have now.
Uh-huh.
So
when they built the Improvement Club Hall, that had a dirt floor in it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this was the school before the improvement center then? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
well, that A-frame building was still down there. Oh, and my dad worked on the roof with the
Oh.
record family back in when they had that. Oh, what do you call those days?
Depression.
Depression.
Oh, yeah.
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 And that when I had met Marguerite Bizarre, that's when my family had met the Curl family,
Mm-hmm.
and so they become good friends and everything, and they visited back and forth and everything. And Ida Curl, she was quite a person to meet and chat with because she was really one of a kind.
Uh-huh. So when you finished your schooling, what did you do mostly? Did you work
Well, I
around
was-
at other places than far away?
Oh
or-
yeah, well I had lived in Seattle first of all, you know, and then I drifted out here because my family, one of my families had purchased that property down here for many years ago, and I lived in Tacoma too.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, when it goes through the years, you know, you sort of forget where you're at.
Sure.
My
Sure.
former husband, he was in the service, so I spent some time in Japan many years ago, and that's when my daughter was born over there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So she was my souvenir.
Did your former husband, did he ever live out here on the Key Peninsula?
Well, for a short time, we had, my family bought, I don't know, do you remember the Ramsey family? Della Ramsey, Ramsdale?
Yeah, I've heard the name, sure.
Yeah, well,
Ramsdale, yeah.
that's on the main highway going toward Longbranch.
Sure.
And she got the property for us because he was in the service and never home. So we only lived there, not a short time before we sort of parted our ways.
Okay. What was your first husband's name?
What you call it? Elhart.
Elhart.
Uh-huh.
First name was?
My name is Delores, but
Yeah,
he was,
his first
his name was Eugene.
Eugene Elhart.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then I had a son, Wayne
Oh, okay.
Elhart.
Okay.
So anyway, then I was single for about, 10 years or so, and I
Uh-huh.
used to live during the point for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Your
So,
son did.
and that's when I saw the fire at the lighthouse.
Oh, yeah. Couldn't you tell us about the lighthouse fire there on McNair
Well, I only
Point?
saw it from a distance.
Uh-huh.
And then at that same night, then I heard about the Key Center store was also on fire,
Yeah.
which I did not know the same person did
Yeah.
until later on that night.
Yeah. Okay.
That was quite interesting to hear all of that.
Yeah, well, we'll get Bud on here in a little bit, and he can tell us about the Key Center fire. Can you tell us anything else that you'd like to share with your experiences on the Key Peninsula, like how things have changed, the trees or the traffic or the population?
Oh, yes.
or-
The traffic has really changed through the years. I can't believe it, how much it had changed, because when I used to live down at Longbranch, no neighbors at all, hardly.
Mhm.
You just feel like you're living on an island somewhere, you know, and you had all the privacy you wanted. It was really peaceful then.
Sure. Did you ever experience running across any escapees from McNeil Island?
No, but Mrs. Defoe did.
Oh, okay.
And did you know that family?
No.
Oh, I worked for Mrs. Defoe, Mrs. Olson, and I worked at Palmer's, and I worked for Mrs. Betty Kelly, who owned the Tribune newspaper years ago.
Oh, okay.
And so I worked quite a few people around that Bay Area in those days, in the years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any experiences you'd like to share with working for any of those people that were
Well,
unusual or historic?
They were quite interesting to work with. I worked for Mrs. Olson, my God, for 12 years,
Uh-huh.
something like that.
Okay.
So, anyway, they all have a different kind of life, you know. They really, at least I was close to working in those areas anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But through the years, I don't know who's all in those places now.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the biggest change that you've seen here on the Key Peninsula since you first came?
Right, that now?
Yeah.
Well, as I grew up, married to Bud for 47 years, I think there's too many people coming out here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Too much people and traffic. It's not like it used to be.